Recently, a serious murder case occurred in the city. When a police investigator named Carl and his partner arrived at the scene, they found an old man dead in the room with a dagger stuck in his head, looking very strange. A rookie police officer immediately ran into the kitchen to look for clues. Unexpectedly, a masked man suddenly rushed out and shot him 3 times in a row. All 3 of them immediately fell to the ground. The police officer died on the spot. His partner was taken to the emergency room and treated for 4 months, but in the end, he was still paralyzed from the waist down. The only lucky person was Carl. The bullet missed his vital spot, but he was traumatized by the attack. He had to see a psychologist regularly for treatment. During Carl's sessions with the psychologist, he always showed serious uncooperativeness. The clenched fists were originally an overly defensive posture, but in fact he was not avoiding therapy, but blaming himself for the shooting. Because Carl was the highest-ranking officer among the 3 at the time, he should have been responsible for protecting and guiding others, but he failed to prevent the tragedy from happening. 4 months had passed, and the police still had no clue about the perpetrator. Carl was one of the people affected by the case, so according to regulations, he could not directly participate in the investigation. Even if he returned to work at the police station, his superior would not assign him any new cases due to psychological problems. Instead, she established a new department called Q, which he was in charge of independently. Everyone thought that Carl was being favored by his superiors and given new tasks, but in fact he was demoted. The office of the Q department was located in the underground archives of the police station. Carl's new job was to organize and reinvestigate cold cases nationwide. Apart from him, this department had only 2 assistants. One was a Syrian refugee named Julie, who had joined the police force earlier. The other was a curly-haired girl named Rose, who worked as an unnoticed clerk in the police department. The 2 assistants were fascinated with backlog cases. While sorting through the files, they picked out a strange case. It was the disappearance of a police officer. 4 years ago, the police officer was at the peak of her career. She had almost never lost a case, except for the murder of the wife. The police officer had collected a lot of evidence that the suspect had repeatedly abused his wife. On the last occasion, he had pushed her down the stairs to her death, but the suspect was too good at acting. He kept saying that he did not kill his wife, and that he loved her. Although all the evidence pointed to the suspect as the murderer, the jury believed his emotional performance. In the end, he declared him not guilty of murder and was acquitted. After that, the police officer continued to receive insulting messages with all kinds of vulgar words. The most serious was a message saying that she should die in front of the computer screen. At that time, she felt as if someone was always watching her. The police officer had a mentally handicapped younger brother who never opened his mouth to speak. Occasionally, the younger brother would take out a photo of him and his sister from the closet and sob. The police officer hired a nanny to take care of his younger brother, but since the insulting messages appeared, she was afraid that staying at home would put her brother in danger, so she decided to take her brother on a trip for a while. The 2 of them boarded a yacht together, but the police officer was still bothered by the messages. She was so angry that she threw her phone into the sea. Her younger brother imitated her by grabbing the hat and throwing it away. Then he wanted to pick it up again, but was stopped by his sister. The police officer saw her brother getting agitated and had to go pick up the hat. Unexpectedly, that was the last time she appeared. No one saw her in the 4 years that followed, nor had anyone seen her body. According to the case file, the yacht had 18 surveillance cameras, so Carl thought it was very unlikely that anyone dared to commit a crime there. If there really had been a murder, it would have been recorded by the cameras, or the tourists would have discovered some clues. Therefore, Carl believed that this police officer might have accidentally fallen into the sea and died, but the assistant thought there was another possibility, that she was kidnapped. As long as the kidnapper had known the location of the camera's blind spots and how to control the police officer so that she wouldn't scream, he could have quietly taken her away without being discovered. Although Carl still felt that the disappearance wasn't worth investigating further, the assistant remained persistent. The 2 of them thought that the case had many twists and turns and insisted that Carl investigate. They then went to the police officer who had been in charge of the case that year. This officer still remembers the incident very clearly. At that time, he had sent many divers to search underwater for several weeks. He had also mobilized police from 8 local government units to coordinate the investigation. According to the river flow, he questioned all the tourists who were there that day, but unfortunately, the case still didn't make any progress. The only clue was that before the disappearance, the police officer had had an argument with her younger brother, and he had also been the only person who had contact with her that day. Carl and his assistant continued to investigate the younger brother's records. After the police officer went missing, her brother was taken to a welfare center in the suburbs. Carl and Julie immediately drove there to find out, but the director refused to let them meet the younger brother. The reason was that he had aphasia and could not provide any useful information to the police. Furthermore, the director was currently his legal guardian, so she did not want him to come into contact with the police, lest his condition worsen. The director seemed to be deliberately concealing information about the brother. Fortunately, a kind receptionist secretly told Carl that a woman came to visit his brother every week. It was said that she used to be his nanny. The nanny lived not far from the welfare center. Carl and Julie immediately went to find her and found her tending to the flower garden behind the house. The nanny said that she had taken care of the brother for more than 12 years. Through the police officer, she knew that the brother was not actually born with aphasia, but had a serious accident when he was 16. The accident caused severe head trauma, which led to speech degeneration and other problems. The police officer never told her what the accident was. Carl asked about the police officer's personal relationships. The nanny said that she was extremely isolated. The place where she lived was remote, with no houses or neighbors around. Therefore, the police officer's house had never had visitors. The person who had the most contact with the police officer was the nanny, but even though they were so close, the police officer never told her that she was taking the younger brother on a trip that day. She only knew about her disappearance through the news later. The nanny exclaimed that the relationship between the two sisters was very close. If the police officer jumped into the sea, her younger brother would jump too, and the police officer would never leave her younger brother alone on a yacht because she loved him very much. As far as the nanny knew, he was the only person she loved. After Carl returned to the police station, he summoned the police officer's former superior. He was the one who had led her to the Q room. 4 years ago, he had told the police investigating the disappearance that he thought the police officer had taken her own life because of her extreme personality. Although she had always maintained an undefeated record, the murder of the wife had dragged her down from the pinnacle of glory. It was very possible that she had despaired, left her younger brother behind, and taken her own life. She might still be out there somewhere, but her superior was stuck here forever. In fact, the police officer was still alive. She was being held in a converted high-pressure chamber. Two strangers used cameras to monitor her day and night. For the past 4 years, they had not killed her, but had only asked her one question over and over again: "Why are you here?" At this time, the police officer remembered a woman she called the Flower Girl. She was the one who was sent to prison by the police officer when the wife murder case was being tried. She said that she knew the suspect's wife and could provide evidence that the suspect had actually committed the murder, on the condition that the police officer help her get out of prison. But the police officer thought that she was lying to him to get free, so she immediately refused. After that, the Flower Girl contacted her again, saying that she was in big trouble, but the police officer still did not help her. The police officer believed that this was the reason why she was detained, but the two strangers denied it. That night, the superiors held a press conference. Carl stood in front of the media to announce the establishment of the Q department and reopen the investigation into the police officer's disappearance. Her younger brother, who was living in the welfare center, saw the news and suddenly became violently ill. Early the next morning, Assistant Julie received news that the younger brother had escaped from the center. At the same time, he informed Carl that he had asked Rose to retrieve the missing documents last night from the records from 4 years ago. The reason for the quarrel between the police officer and her younger brother was because he threw the hat into the water and was blown away by the wind. That day, the wind was blowing in the same direction as today. Carl immediately took off Julie's hat to test it. The result was that the hat was blown away by the wind along the trajectory of the yacht. The two followed that trajectory to the parking lot. They guessed that the hat was blown here that day, and the police officer got off the boat to pick it up. The place where she stood and where Carl was standing now were both blind spots of the surveillance camera. If someone wanted to kidnap the police officer there, it would be easy. After investigating some information, Carl took Julie to the inspector's hometown and asked the local police. The old policeman said that the two sisters' mother died very early. After that, their father began to fall into depravity and did not care about the family. This caused the police officer to often cause trouble and was often arrested. Later, it was a surprise that she became a police officer. But the most regrettable thing was her brother, because he was very smart. He could have had a bright future. But when he was 16 years old, when the younger brother was home alone, he was unfortunately robbed. He was brutally beaten, resulting in a serious brain injury. The robber then jumped off a ferry and died while running away. Later, Carl and Julie followed the address provided by the police to the current residence of the police officer's father. He said that the two sisters had not been close since childhood. After her brother was beaten and injured by the robber, the police officer took him away from home and never returned. However, not long after that, she secretly returned once, just to get the diamond necklace her mother left behind. Other than that, she did nothing else. At this time, the younger brother was walking through the woods back to the old house where the two sisters used to live. He went into the bedroom to search for a suitcase. Inside were a few paintings that he had drawn himself. He took one of the paintings and hid it in his pocket before falling asleep on the sofa. Unexpectedly, the younger brother was awakened by the group of thugs occupying the house and ran away in panic. In another development, Rose suggested a new line of reasoning to Carl. She said that if the police officer really wanted to steal the necklace, she wouldn't have to wait 12 years to come back. Moreover, the police officer's father was an alcoholic, so he wasn't worth his daughter coming back to see, so it was very possible that she went back to her hometown to meet someone else. In addition, Carl investigated the source of the messages, cursing the police officer. He discovered that most of them were sent from fake IPs, so he couldn't find any clues, but he noticed a strange detail. The policeman in charge of investigating the missing police officer's case had previously worked on a major case of lost property in a hotel. How could such a mysterious disappearance of a famous police officer be assigned to a police officer with no track record? Who made that decision? Or was there someone who deliberately did not want the truth to be revealed? Julie continued to investigate alone and went to the sisters' old house. From the thug's story, she found out that the younger brother had come here to rummage through the bedroom, but after being scared by the thugs, he ran away. After knowing that, Carl and Julie immediately thought of the nanny. After the police officer went missing, the younger brother had stayed at his grandmother's house for a few days, so he must have known the way back here. Sure enough, he was hiding in the flower garden behind the house. As soon as he saw Carl, he immediately gave Carl the hidden painting. The front side was a symbol of some kind of bird. The back side was a drawing of an unknown person wearing a hat with a bird symbol on it. The younger brother couldn't write, he could only draw. With the help of the nanny, Carl understood that the younger brother had seen that hat at home, and that night, Carl took the younger brother back to the welfare center. That same night, the director installed a surveillance camera in his room. The younger brother was very quiet, always recalling the face of the man in the hat. He remembered that it was a rainy night 4 years ago, when the police officer was busy with a murder case. He was sitting on the sofa watching TV, when he turned around and saw a person standing outside the window. At the same time, Rose stayed up all night, looking up all the information related to that bird symbol, and she discovered that the bird's name was Boobry. Coincidentally, the ship owned by the police officer's father was also named Boobry. Although Rose had a clue, she still didn't know where to start the investigation. Her colleague reminded her that Carl had previously investigated the police officer's younger brother, who had been seriously injured by a robber when he was 16. The robber later died while escaping. Sometimes seemingly unrelated details could hide a bigger secret. Rose thought this made sense, so she immediately went back to the police officer's hometown. Sure enough, she found something unusual in that year's case. The robber was a repeat offender. Every time he committed a crime, he only stole property and never injured anyone. But in that robbery, he had seriously injured the police officer's younger brother. The old policeman recounted that after that incident, the police officer took her younger brother and left his hometown and never returned. But the young policeman sitting next to him reminded him that the police officer had actually secretly returned a few days later. The purpose was to attend the robber's funeral. She returned to attend the funeral of the man who almost killed her younger brother. According to the local police, the robber and the police officer actually had a very good relationship. The reason he robbed was also because his family went bankrupt. The young policeman even volunteered to take Rose to meet the robber's living relative. It was his mother. On the way, the policeman said that he had looked at the case file that year, and he discovered discovered a diamond necklace that was not taken at the scene. Rose asked the policeman to send her a photo of the necklace. While she was looking at the photo, the two of them arrived at the robber's mother's house. The house was an abandoned factory, covered with warning signs, but the mother was not home. The police guessed that she had gone to church to pray. Since Rose was in a hurry to get back to catch the ferry, she couldn't wait. Before leaving, she saw the bouquet of flowers that the mother had placed in front of the door. On it was written, "In memory of the most special son." When the curly-haired girl returned to Q's room, the police had just sent a photo of the diamond necklace. This was the relic left by the police officer's mother. It was very valuable and was insured. It was also the necklace the police officer had secretly returned home to steal on the day of the robber's funeral. At this point, Rose came up with a terrifying hypothesis. The younger brother had seen a man wearing a hat with the Boubry symbol on both the yacht and at home, and the police officer's father's boat had the same name as that bird. So could her father be the man wearing the hat? He had said that the police officer had stolen the necklace left by her mother. Was that the motive for the crime? But Carl thought that such a motive sounded too absurd. Besides, if the younger brother saw that the man in the hat was her father, how could she not recognize him? Rose's guess was clearly unreasonable. Just when the investigation reached a dead end, the assistant found a greeting card in the missing persons file. It said, "I've started looking forward to our next meeting at the hotel," and was signed simply as S. After the police officer went missing, all of her personal belongings were sorted out by the secretary and handed over to the police station. The secretary told the police that many male colleagues had flirted with the police officer, but she was cold and indifferent to anyone. Only one colleague, named Yefun, interested her. The two had secretly dated for a short time. Although Yefun's name did not start with S, Carl still decided to ask Yefun out of principle to not miss any clues. His testimony was similar to what the secretary said. He confirmed that he and the police officer had secretly dated, but they only dated for a while and then broke up. The two had dated at the Flower Garden Hotel several times. Because the police officer was a cautious person, he booked rooms under a fake name each time. Later, Carl and two colleagues went to the hotel to check the guest list. They discovered that the fake name the police officer used was her mother's. The credit card used to pay was also in her mother's name. But the strange thing was that the guest list not only had Yefun's signature, but also an unfamiliar name. It was Sam Haig. But who was Sam Haig? At the same time, the police officer who was being held in the hyperbaric chamber was asked the same familiar question. Why was she here? This time she remembered the man named Sam. She had dated Sam at the hotel. The last time they had met was a few days before she was kidnapped. The police officer said she was going on a vacation but didn't know when she would return. Sam thought she was making up an excuse to break up with him, so they argued. The police officer wondered if it was because of Sam that she was taken here, but he was dead. He was dead because of her. Carl and Julie also investigated that Sam's favorite place to go was the climbing center. The day before the police officer went missing, a climbing coach found Sam's body on the cliff. People suspected that he slipped and fell to his death. The coach said that he had arrived very early that day. He saw Sam's cart in the parking lot. Since the climbing center was a closed space, Sam didn't have a key to enter, so every time he came, he had to wait for the coach to open the door. That meant the car had been parked there since the day before, and Sam hadn't left since then. Julie said that he had checked Sam's locker and equipment backpack in the center, but couldn't find the car key. There was no information about the key in the button log either. It was obvious that someone had taken it. Sam's case was just like the police officer's case. There was something very unusual about them. At the detention place, the police officer gently ran his hand along the wall and wrote down Sam's name. At this moment, her train of thought immediately went back to the past when she first met Sam. He was a reporter who had proactively contacted her and said that he wanted to expose the scandal in the prosecutor's office. That was also where she worked. At that time, Carl and Julie went to the editor-in-chief. He told them that Sam's job was to expose corruption among high-ranking officials. Many people wanted to kill him, so Sam lived very carefully in a house in the countryside. He only used a phone once before throwing it away. Even when he was about to publish an article, he didn't tell anyone in advance. Sam always kept secrets from everyone. So even the editor-in-chief didn't know much about him, and couldn't provide any useful clues. The investigation reached a deadlock again. Carl then went to his old colleague for help. This colleague, even though he was in the hospital, was still researching the police officer's disappearance. He was a cautious and discreet person. He had found some clues that Carl and everyone else had never thought of. The police officer's maternal family was extremely wealthy. They had left her a huge inheritance. After receiving this information, Carl immediately immediately, returned to Q department and summoned all the members and associates to a video conference. According to the will at that time, the deceased mother had left all her assets to the police officer, and she could use them at any time after she turned 18. Now that the police officer was missing, the inheritance would naturally be passed to her younger brother, but he was mentally ill and was not capable of managing the assets. Therefore, according to the law, the money would belong to the legal guardian, who was the director of the welfare center. The first time they met, she had worn heavy makeup and expensive jewelry. It could be seen that she placed great importance on her appearance, which required money to maintain. But the welfare center she worked at was mainly a shelter for outcasts. So where did she get the money from? The director firmly denied Carl's accusations. She said that without a search warrant, he had no right to investigate her office or bank account. While the two sides were stalling for time, Julie took the opportunity to check on the police officer's younger brother and found him unconscious on the bed after being injected with multiple sedatives. Many other patients showed similar symptoms. This was the director's way of controlling them. After all, most of these patients had no relatives left, or if they did, no one cared about them, so the director could do whatever she wanted to them. If someone was like the police officer's younger brother, that was, someone who had lost a relative and had property, then the director would find a way to become their legal guardian and seize the property. Having discovered the truth, Carl couldn't leave the police officer's younger brother there. He took him to the nanny's house. Sometimes people's hearts are scary. They are all strangers. Some are like ants clinging to people and sucking blood, but some treat us like family and take good care of us. On this side, Rose immediately left as soon as she returned to the Q department because she discovered a new clue. From the police officer's bill, it could be seen that she often went to a high-end laundry after work. The police officer was a person who had high demands on the quality of life and was extremely careful. So once she chose something, it was not easy to change, so she became a regular customer there. However, exactly 1 week before the police officer went missing, she went to a cheap, little-known laundry. Although she had only been there once, it was enough to make Julie and Rose immediately investigate. When they showed the photo of the police officer, the shop owner immediately started cursing. She believed that she and the police officer were enemies because the police officer had once caused her daughter to be sent to prison. The last time she had come back here before she disappeared was probably to apologize. She had stood outside the door for a long time, pondering, and then left like a coward. Rose wondered what the police officer had done to their family, but she said that Rose should go ask her own daughter, who was in prison, directly. The shop owner's daughter was the flower girl. 4 years ago, she lost an eye. According to her story, she had been in a women's shelter. There she met a woman with a black eye and broken ribs. That woman said her husband wanted to kill her, but no one believed her. And that woman was the victim in the murder case 4 years ago. After the flower girl was taken to jail by the police officer, she knew that the woman had really been murdered by her husband. She immediately contacted the police officer to provide clues that could change the course of the case. But the police officer did not believe her. She even said that the jury would never believe someone like the flower girl. At that time, there were also rumors that the police officer had connections with the flower girl. The suspect in the wife's murder case was very powerful. He bribed the prisoners to threaten the flower girl. She asked the police officer for help but still did not receive any help. As a result, she lost an eye. At this time, the police officer who was locked in the hyperbaric chamber also remembered the incident with the flower girl. Years ago, she had proposed calling the flower girl to testify in court but was strongly opposed by her superior. The reason was that testimony from someone like the flower girl was not only useless but could also leave a bad impression on the jury. She was then stabbed blind, but the superior ordered the police officer not to get involved in matters that didn't concern her. It was then that she realized that there was a huge force behind the incident. She contacted Sam and agreed to let him help expose the scandal in the prosecutor's office. The first time they met was at the Hoa Vien Hotel. The police officer always felt that Sam was very familiar with her. Only then did she remember that he had appeared many times at the trials of the wife murder case. This showed that what Sam wanted to expose was most likely related to the suspect in the case. The police officer was a strong person, and Sam always liked challenges. Therefore, the two soon developed feelings for each other, and their relationship went further. Back to the present, the Q department summoned the police officer's ex-lover. Yefan was the person who participated in the wife murder case with her, but she had never mentioned the name of the flower girl. Usually, the identity of witnesses is kept confidential and must be carefully screened before deciding whether to bring them to court or not. If Yifan didn't know anything. It meant that the police officer had bypassed him and reported directly to her superior. So the superior was the only one who knew. So why did the rumor that the police officer had a connection with the flower girls spread so widely? It was very possible that the superior had leaked the information. The next day, Rose brought a new clue to visit her old colleague. The team's best detective did not disappoint. He had also just received a very valuable piece of news from the internet. 4 years ago, a car had been driving normally when it had suddenly hit a pedestrian. The accident had left the victim paralyzed on one side. Later, the police investigation confirmed that the driver of the car was forced by another car to swerve out of the lane, leading to this chaotic situation. The time of the incident also happened to be the time when the trial for the murder of the wife was taking place. And the person driving the car was the daughter of the police officer's superior. When everything was connected, the truth became clear. The flower girl had contacted the police officer and wanted to testify in court. Her testimony could influence the jury's impression of the suspect in the wife murder case. At that time, the suspect had arranged for someone to cause an accident involving the police officer's superior's daughter in order to threaten him. He forced the superior to intervene in the case to his advantage. The police officer then proposed to summon the flower girl as a witness, but the leader refused. He then secretly revealed this to the suspect. The suspect immediately had someone stab the flower girl in the eye in prison. After investigating this series of hidden details, Sam went to the police officer and asked to cooperate to reveal everything. Was this the reason why one person died and one person went missing? Of course, the truth was not that simple. Carl and his assistant went to see the superior leader, but because all the evidence was just speculation, he denied everything. Carl had to take his assistant to find the suspect in the wife murder case. Unexpectedly, he and his lawyer frankly admitted that they had sent someone to blind the flower girl. The suspect even said that he had known for a long time that Sam was investigating him, but the suspect had never threatened Sam because he was the one who proactively sought out the suspect's lawyer to report that there was a flower girl who wanted to testify in court. So there were two accusers. One was the leader he threatened, and the other was Sam. But why did Sam do that? Could it be that he approached the police officer just to please the suspect? At the same time, in the hyperbaric chamber, the police officer suddenly remembered someone she had almost forgotten. The robber was once her lover. They were close to each other every day, but the robber's younger brother hated her very much. Every time they dated, he would find a way to ruin it. Her stepfather also strongly objected. He said the robber's family was full of weirdos, but she didn't care and thought love was more important than anything. Back to the present, when the police officer woke up, a tray of food was brought into the cell. She took a bite of an apple, but her tooth hurt. She begged the mysterious person for painkillers, but they only gave her a pair of pliers, wanting her to pull out the bad tooth herself. Carl had a source reporting that before becoming a reporter, Sam had been imprisoned in a reformatory. Among them was a boy who had always regarded Sam as his deceased older brother. He kept following him around and was beaten to the point of death. Rose brought the file on Sam's fall from the cliff to meet her former partner. The two discovered a strange detail. A few nights before Sam died, the climbing coach had sent him many messages. The coach asked, "Are you still at the hotel? Is that person still there?" So who was that person? Was this the police office? Rose then went to the climbing center immediately. The coach knew he couldn't hide it, so he confessed a secret. Sam had been having an affair with his wife. The person he was referring to in the text messages was his wife. He wanted to save his marriage, so he wanted to talk to Sam properly. Those text messages were sent on nights when Sam and his wife sneaked out to a hotel near the climbing center, not when he was at the Garden Hotel. At the same time, the locked-up police officer came up with the perfect escape plan. She used the pliers from before to destroy the pressure device in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber. While the supervisor checked and was injured, she quickly crawled out through the air duct. She grabbed the phone that fell on the floor and dialed the police, but the plan failed. She was caught and locked back in the chamber. While the police officer was unconscious, her memories took her back to the past. After her mother died, she inherited a large fortune, but had to wait until she was 18 to use it, so she wanted to steal a piece of jewelry left by her mother. The police officer only needed a ring to leave his father and live comfortably for a few years. At that time, the robber was already her lover. He said he was willing to help her break into the house to steal. She said that every Monday night, her father and younger brother were out, which was the ideal time to act. But after thinking about it, she couldn't bear to let the robber commit a crime, so she gave up. Unexpectedly, one night when the police officer returned home, she saw the robber driving away. That day, her younger brother didn't go out as usual. When she found him, he had been beaten so badly that his head was bleeding profusely. profusely. The police officer then realized that her lover had betrayed her. That was the reason why from then on she didn't trust anyone. But Sam was an exception. After a long time together, she opened up to him. So the last time they met at the hotel, the police officer said she would take her brother on a trip for a while. But Sam misunderstood that she wanted to break up, so she invited him to go with her. They would go on a cruise around 10 a.m. This was also an opportunity for him to meet police officer's brother, but Sam refused her invitation. On this side, Carl suddenly discovered something horrifying. Before the police officer went missing, she had spent the night at the hotel with Sam, but according to the message the coach sent him, at that time, Sam was with the coach's wife at another hotel near the climbing center. He couldn't be in two places at the same time to meet two different women, so they could only be two different. Obviously, the coach recognized the real Sam. So who was the person who met the police officer? At that moment, the mysterious man asked the police officer why she was locked up here, but she still couldn't think of a reason. One of the two men reminded her that the last time he and she met was at a funeral. At this moment, the police officer remembered that it was the robber's funeral. The people present were his mother and younger brother. During the time she was locked up, she thought about many people. She blamed herself many times, but the police officer never apologized to the robber because he was the one who beat her poor younger brother. He used to be a very smart and promising person, but was turned into a disabled person by the robber. Therefore, the robber deserved to die. The man among the two mysterious men was angered by the police officer's words. He slowly walked to the glass door of the high-pressure chamber. At this moment, the police officer also saw clearly who was standing in front of him. She was extremely panicked and couldn't believe that person was Sam, but that person smirked and said, "No, it's lie cheating." The next day, Carl and Julie immediately went to the rehabilitation center. According to the manager, Sam used to be one of the most rebellious children, but then, another boy was brought in. That boy said that Sam was very similar to his dead brother. He kept following him around. In the end, Sam beat him almost to death. His name was Janice. He said that he and his brother were very afraid of their mother, because every time they did something wrong, she didn't beat them, but locked them in a high-pressure chamber to punish them. During that terrible time, the robber was the only one who took care of and comforted Janice. This made him extremely dependent on him. After the robber died, Janice's world collapsed, until he met Sam and thought that his brother had returned, so he stubbornly clung to Sam like that. The Q department summoned the police officer's younger brother. With the help of the nanny, he recounted the events of the night of the robbery. It turned out that when the younger brother was home alone, he heard a noise. His instinct for self-defense kicked in, causing him to accidentally hit the robber who was sneaking in. Unexpectedly, Janice was there too. He saw the injured robber and immediately rushed forward, intending to kill the police officer's younger brother. If the robber hadn't stopped him, the younger brother would have died that night. Everyone in the countryside said the robber was a bad boy, but in fact, he had never had a criminal record. On the contrary, it was Janice who had done many bad things. For a long time, the robber had always stood up to take the blame for him. Rose took out Janice's photo. The police officer's younger brother compared it with the sketch of the man in the hat he had drawn. He immediately confirmed that it was the man who had been secretly following him. The whole truth was clear. After she grew up, Janice still kept in touch with Sam. He stole Sam's identity. He imitated his appearance, behavior, and lifestyle. Then, Janice approached the police officer as Sam. One day, Sam discovered that Janice was going to the climbing center in his disguise. He followed Janice to question and was killed by him. Then, Janice took Sam's car keys. He made the scene look like a cliff fall accident. That made everyone think that Sam died due to negligence while climbing. The police officer never suspected Janice's identity. The last time they met, she said that she would leave the city by yacht at 10 a.m. That information accidentally gave Janice and his mother the right time to act. Now, the police officer understood why she was locked up here. Janice and his mother had completed their plan for revenge. They increased the pressure of the oxygen chamber and prepared to leave the scene. Before leaving, Janice coldly told her that the robber only thought about her all the time. That was what he hated the most. Janice emphasized that it was because of her that the robber died. She was guilty, and no one could escape their sins forever. On this side, Carl and his assistant went to the abandoned factory. This was where the robber's mother used to live. Rose and her colleagues also investigated that. After the robber's father passed away, his mother suffered from a serious mental disorder. She was locked in a nursing home for 19 months before being released. When her son also died, her illness became more serious. This showed that the second son, Janice, grew up in in such an environment, so his mental health was definitely not normal. There was a banner with a bird symbol on it in the factory. Right below it, Carl and his teammates found the high-pressure chamber, and the police officer was also locked inside. The pressure in the chamber was skyrocketing. If Carl opened the door carelessly, she would die on the spot. The assistant asked Carl to find the control system to stabilize the pressure and then call the response team to bring the portable oxygen chamber to move her out. But before he could act, Janice returned with a gun in her hand. He shot Carl once and then tried to shoot the police officer one last time. At that moment, she shouted loudly to distract him. Julie rushed in and restrained him. Carl only suffered minor injuries, not life-threatening. Finally, the police officer was safely transferred to the portable oxygen chamber. Her younger brother was also brought to the scene. After 4 years of separation, the two sisters finally reunited. Janice's mother also could not escape the police's pursuit. In the end, she had no way out and decided to leave this world. 3 months later, the police officer recovered. She went to the police station to thank Carl. At that time, she knew that he was still recovering from his illness and had not returned to the unit. She went to room Q and saw the board full of clues and pictures related to her. All of them were collected by Carl's team to rescue her. When leaving, the police officer accidentally bumped into Carl in the elevator. She only had time to say sorry. He replied, "It's okay." The police officer did not recognize the man as Carl, and he did not reveal his identity. He still did what he did best, which was to uphold justice. It didn't matter whether anyone recognized him or not. Today's movie ends here. See you in the next videos. Goodbye.